Uh-oh.
Okay, we'll start with this. Former champion Delphine-Persoon, on the heels of the Alicia Baumgardner fight, took to his social media and said, "The scorecard World Cup camp. The first 2 rounds were not for me, but slowly it began to tilt. If it was going to be about the full laps, I would like to see the result. Again, sounds a lot like Delphine. Sounds like she thinks the tide was starting to turn. She got off to a very rough start, and from the look of the fight through 4 rounds, I don't get the sense that the tide was starting to turn, though ultimately we'll never know because the contest ended rather abruptly due to a clash of heads, a cut around Delphine-Persoon's eye. They didn't complete 4 rounds, so it was ruled a no contest. It's for this reason, I think Delphine had enough in the tank that they should have allowed it to go into the 5th round. And if things are still looking the same, and she's still getting beat up, then you wave it off.
Because she was getting beat up.
In the spirit of fairness and objectivity, we don't know for sure. We don't know with an absolute certitude that Alicia would have been able to keep up that pace through round 5, 6, 7, and so on.
I personally think she would have. I think she was on her way to knocking out Delphine-Persoon. That's how it looked to me.
But it is possible. It is possible that as the fight progressed, maybe Alicia would have slowed down, and maybe Delphine would have found her way into the fight, provided she didn't get herself knocked out. Because like I said, watching that thing, it looked like Alicia was on her way to knocking out Delphine. So is there going to be a rematch? Is there going to be a rematch on the premise that there was no official outcome? It was ruled a no contest.
WBC going to order a rematch.
Remember that this was a mandated title fight. Delphine-Persoon was Alicia's mandatory challenger. By all rights, she satisfied the mandatory. She fought her.
I don't know.
Feel like a rematch happening is contingent upon Alicia's time at super featherweight, because if she's planning on moving up, then it doesn't really matter.
She's gonna chuck the belts anyway.
There are no big fights, no more big names at 130 pounds for Alicia Baumgardner to fight. She's already won all the belts there, defended them. Why would she stay? There's a lot that's left in the air, left to the imagination. That Alicia Baumgardner is a free agent now, free to go wherever she wants to go. Does she stay with Matchroom? Does she go somewhere else? Does she move up in weight?
The names that she's mentioned, Katie Taylor, Amanda Serrano, Clarissa Shields to a lesser extent, all the girls that she wants to fight, and all the big fights, the bigger fights, they are north of 130 pounds.
That in mind, you get the sense that even if the WBC were to order a rematch between Delphine and Alicia, it might not happen anyway because Alicia might have intentions of moving up.
Go to 135.
Terry Harper's got a belt at 135. Terry Harper just won the WBO title from Rhiannon Dixon. Maybe you do a rematch with her. Maybe you target Jessica Kamara for her version of the WBA title. Maybe you do that.
Or Beatrice Ferreira for the IBF.
The bottom line is, there's not a lot left for Alicia at 130 pounds. She's already won all the belts. She's already been there and done that with the somebodies at the weight. There's not much reason to stay there. And just because the WBC might order a rematch doesn't mean it happens.
If it did.
If there were a second fight between Alicia and Delphine, yeah, I think Alicia would win it. The fight I saw, 3-4 rounds I saw, Alicia was well on her way to knocking out Delphine-Persoon. She dropped her early. She was busting her up.
Delphine-Persoon is a characteristically aggressive fighter, usually coming forward, usually throwing punches and bunches. In this fight, she was getting backed up. She was getting backed off. into the ropes.
Beat up. She was getting outfought. She was outgunned. Alicia was too fast, too strong, too sharp for her. So, I mean, if they were to do a second fight, if they ordered one, and Alicia went through with it, I think it would just be the same thing.
Delphine's not getting any younger. She's 39, going on 40. Time is not on her side. In a rematch, she's not going to be faster.
She's not going to be sharper, younger. You can't go back in time. So, I mean, it just is what it is. It sounds like she wants a rematch, but I don't think it goes any different the second time around. Men's featherweight news. On the heels of his homecoming fight and his first successful defense as WBA champion, Nick Ball names preferred opponent for his next fight. This is who he would prefer to fight. After a successful world title defense, Nick Ball knows who he wants to fight next. The WBA featherweight champion stopped the brave Ronnie Rios in the 10th round of their main event at the M&S Bank Arena in Liverpool. Ball's first defense doubled up as a homecoming to make the night extra special for the 27-year-old. He fought a very resilient Ronnie Rios, who was dropped 2 times before ultimately being stopped in the 10th. And Nick stayed in character. Nick does have a penchant for aggression, for volume punching.
He's a pressure guy, so it's everything you would expect.
It's been a memorable 2024 in more ways than one for Ball. Back in March, Descalza lost out on his first world title challenge when his bout against WBC champion Ray Vargas was ruled a split draw after 12 rounds. Ball bounced back 3 months later, defeating talented American Raymond Ford by way of a split decision. Speaking to Boxing News after his win last night, Ball admitted he'd like to get his hands on Vargas' WBC title. That'd be a good one to get, he said. Everyone's speaking about that. Even if they're speaking about my fights, they're going back to that one saying that Mexican robbed you. You should have won that fight. Everywhere I go, people are saying you should have won that fight. Even people who really don't watch boxing are saying that to me. So it would be a good one. Vargas is yet to make his next move and hasn't fought since his duel with Ball 7 months ago. The byproduct of being attached to the PBC.
If he is still attached to the PBC, we don't know that he is, though he might be.
Nick Ball seems to be the only champion in the featherweight division interested in unifying titles. I don't see this energy from Ray Vargas. I don't see this energy from Rafael Espinoza.
Angelo Leo.
Most I've seen from Angelo is an interest in fighting Naoya Inoue if and when Inoue moves up, but he's not on the eve of moving up. So what about unifying titles with your fellow champions? There are 4 of you guys up there. Something's gotta give. The only guy I see pursuing unifications is Nick Ball.
He said he would prefer to unify with Ray Vargas in a rematch in his next fight, but as luck would have it, he's not free to do so. He's not free to unify. He has a mandatory challenger in the queue in former unified super bantamweight champion Stephen Fulton, who is now campaigning as a featherweight and was in action a few weeks ago against Carlos Castro.
That's his mandatory. As much as he would like to unify next, in all likelihood, that's who he's going to end up fighting, Stephen Fulton. Now, there's no money behind Stephen Fulton.
How do you know?
Look at how long it took the PBC to get him a rebound fight. Well over a year. And when he got it, look at the placement. Look at his placement on the show. They had him on the prelim card, not even the main card.
They had him on the prelim card of Canelo versus Berlanga, but they made sure to put Rolly on the main card.
I remember before Stephen lost to Inoue, when he was still unified champion, he said he didn't feel the love, the brotherly love in the city of brotherly love. He felt like he wasn't being supported. This was before he lost. The fight week, during fight week when he was going to fight Inoue, I remember another quote where he said that was the most promotion that he ever got, the promotion that he got for the Inoue fight. But what fights he had on the PBC...
I guess he felt like he wasn't being pushed, like he wasn't being promoted by the PBC.
To say that the most promotion that you ever got as a champion was on somebody else's promotion under somebody else's banner, that's saying a lot. So in hindsight, like I said, I don't get the sense there's much, if any, money behind Stephen Fulton to where fighting Nick Ball would become a haggling situation, that the PBC wants it on their side, but Frank wants it on his.
I don't get the sense the PBC is going to fight for this thing.
It's a bigger fight in Nick Ball's neck of the woods anyway. Nick Ball has a bigger following in Liverpool than Stephen Fulton has in Philadelphia or anywhere else in America. Queensbury is more invested in the career of Nick Ball than the PBC is invested in the career of Stephen Fulton. That being said, if the fight happens, I think it happens in the UK. I don't think it happens here.
What are Stefan's chances?
Not good. Not based on what he showed us in the Carlos Castro fight. So, Stephen Fulton wasn't ever a big puncher. I mean, he wasn't a big puncher at 122, and he's still not a big puncher now at 126. In the Carlos Castro fight a few weeks ago, he was getting in. He was getting in and getting off with clean punches, but they weren't having any effect on Carlos. He didn't hurt him.
But Carlos did hurt him. Carlos dropped him.
Dropped him in the 5th round and hurt him more than once with a counter right hand. That Stephen Fulton, is a good boxer, but he ain't big on power. And without that to get the other guy's respect, how are you going to keep him off? Bigger featherweights and more seasoned featherweights than Stephen Fulton have struggled to keep Nick Ball off of them, whether you're talking about Ray Vargas or Raymond Ford.
They couldn't keep him off.
So how is Stephen going to keep him off? Without power to get Nick Ball's respect, without the power to hurt him and slow him down,
He's in trouble.
there's no nice way for me to say that I think Nick Ball runs over him. I absolutely do. Nick's got power. Stephen doesn't. Nick is active, sharp.
Yesterday was his 3rd fight this year. He fought Ray Vargas, Raymond Ford, now Ronnie Rios, all in the same calendar year.
The night of, I think Nick is going to be hungrier, he's going to be sharper, he's going to be stronger. You seen Nick Ball? The way he judo tosses these guys around? Nick Ball is actually a very small featherweight, but he's physically strong. He knows how to use that lower center of gravity to his advantage in the clinch, in tight spots.
Good in the clinch.
I don't think Stephen is as physically strong within close quarters in the clinch, and punch for punch, no, I don't think he punches as hard as Nick Ball. Absolutely not.
No.
He's not as hard a puncher as Nick. So if they make it, I've got Nick Ball, and I've got Nick Ball by way of knockout. It's not like Stephen Fulton hasn't been knocked out before. He has.
He knew he knocked him out.
Even if that was at 122, and even if that was Inoue that knocked him out, we saw in Stephen's last fight, you ain't gotta be Inoue to drop Stephen Fulton. You ain't gotta be Inoue to hurt him. Carlos Castro hurt him.
To some people, Carlos Castro beat him. That Stephen Fulton was very lucky to get the decision in that fight.
A split decision at that. So, if the WBA orders this thing, and it happens, I've got Nick Ball by way of knockout. I don't think Stephen Fulton has what it takes to keep him off. I don't think he'll be able to handle the pressure. Finally, in men's cruiserweight news, Chris Billam-Smith is ready to thrash Zurdo and join the UK boxing elite. CBS told World Boxing News earlier this week that he's ready to make a statement against Zurdo Ramirez and join Daniel Dubois as British boxing royalty. The cruiserweights meet in a WBA, WBO World Championship Unification next month on the 16th atop a Latino night-themed card at the venue during Riyadh season in Saudi.
They've had the kickoff press conference for the show. You could see the difference in size. You could see that Chris is a bona fide cruiserweight, whereas
Zurdo is a smaller fighter that moved up. And if you saw Zurdo's last 2 fights, his physique, he's very fleshy as a cruiserweight, very pudgy, though it doesn't slow him down. That's why I give him the edge. To the eye, he looks the faster fighter of the two, faster hands with faster feet, which is saying a lot because for a long time, Zurdo was a pressure guy. It's not often you see a pressure fighter, a come-forward volume puncher, do a full 180 like Zurdo did.
he's a boxer now.
WBN spoke to Billam-Smith behind the scenes at a press conference in downtown LA last week. 1 month removed from the Golden Boy Promotion spectacle, for Billam-Smith, it's a chance to solidify his status as one of the few fighters who can take the superstar baton from older guard boxers like Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua. For Chris, who I think is an overachiever.
This would be a big win, a very big win.
While Fury and Joshua licked the wounds from their recent losses, fighters like Billam-Smith, Daniel Dubois, and Hamza Shiraz all appear poised to carry the UK scene on their backs in the coming years. Shiraz and Dubois recently scored wins on the big stage at Wembley Stadium, having beaten Tyler Denny by second-round KO and Anthony Joshua by fifth-round finish, respectively, September 21st of last month. This upcoming fight with Ramirez, which is the toughest test of Billam-Smith's career to date, could make or break his readiness to take over from Fury and Joshua as one of Britain's very best. It's an honor to be ranked so high pound for pound in Britain, Billam-Smith told WBN when we told him he was third, according to BoxRec, behind Dubois and Shiraz.
More than that, if he wins this fight, whether you like it or not, you do have to introduce Chris or Zurdo in that pound-for-pound conversation.
For Chris, this would be the second world champion he would have taken a belt from. The first was Lawrence Okolie. Zurdo, theoretically, would be the second, and for Zurdo, it's the same thing, +1.
Chris would be the third world champion Zurdo took a belt from. The first was Arthur Abraham years ago at 168 for the WBO. More recently, he took the WBA from Arsene Goulamarian.
That's 2.
If he beats Chris for his belt, that's 3. 3 champions across 2 divisions. Don't forget, Zurdo's a 2-division champion.
You know, we've got a lot of great fighters in Britain, Billam-Smith said. We're doing well as a nation. We've got Nick Ball, who recently became world champion, and there's always others coming through. We've got the depth, he said. It's a real honor to be out there as one of our world champions. Dubois, Billam-Smith said, put in a great performance against Joshua and has now proven in the last couple of fights that he truly belongs at world level. Chris aspires to do the same. With the main event fight in Riyadh season against Zurdo, Smith gets a chance to join Dubois as someone who belongs there too. I thought Zurdo was smaller than I expected. At the face-off, Billam-Smith said, I thought he might be a bit bigger. He's still got a lot of skill and ability, but I've got all the intensity, he added. Confident that he'll return from Saudi Arabia with the 21st win of his 7-year pro career. This opportunity for me is huge, Billam-Smith said earlier while on the stage. I've been written off many times before. Last time out against Richard Riakporhe, who gave him his lone defeat. I was going into his backyard, his soccer stadium, and it was all about him, and it was his night, and I went and spoiled that part, and unfortunately for the Latinos on November 16th, I'll be doing exactly the same thing. In truth, my track record with Chris's fights is not the best. I thought Lawrence was going to beat him, and he didn't. Then I thought Richard was going to beat him, and he didn't. Now, I think Zurdo is going to beat him.
But I've been wrong before.
So maybe Chris is a bit better than advertised, and he's better than I've given him credit for in the past. But when he says he's ready to thrash Zurdo, it gives you an idea what he wants to do. He wants to big man the little guy. He wants to out-muscle him, because he can't out-hustle him.
He doesn't have the speed, the maneuvering capability. What Chris brings to the table is size, strength, and power.
Zurdo brings experience. Many more rounds in the bank across more divisions than Chris Billam-Smith, by and large. Even if he's not as experienced as a cruiserweight, he is a more experienced fighter overall with more rounds in the bank. And a new bag. Zurdo's not just sitting in the pocket, sitting on his punches, swinging for the fences. He's not doing that anymore. He's on his toes, moving around, using his jabs, setting traps.
Alternating from boxing mid-range to inside to moving and punching from the outside. This is how I think he beats Chris. Chris is a flat-footed fighter. He's got his virtues, but he's not fast on his feet. Most of what he wants to do, he has to do within close quarters.
He has to get there, and I don't think Zurdo's going to let him. I think Zurdo's going to keep space and box.
I think Zurdo wins.
This is a Golden Boy promotion show. Unless Chris goes in there and hits Zurdo with a chair, if the rounds are remotely competitive and the fight is remotely close, you already know Zurdo's going to get all the consideration, all the favor.
So I've got Zurdo.